And a very good afternoon to everybody. As you begin to file in here on Substack Live, you're watching live with Omar Moore and our special guest today, Lori Brooke. She is running for District 2 Supervisor here in San Francisco. I want to welcome everybody who comes in, and I'm going to have in a few moments Lori introduce herself and spell her first and last name out as well, and give a little bit of a background about herself. So, Lori, if you could do that, please, right now, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me. It's a treat. Lori, Lori, and Brooke, Brooke, because believe it or not, simple names like that can have 6 spellings, both the first and the last. So just to give you everyone an idea of who I am and why I'm running and why I'm qualified. So I am running for the District 2 Supervisor seat. I have been a neighborhood leader activist for, about 27 years. Since I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. That's how I know the timing, because that's when I joined the Cow Hollow Association board, for which I am still on. And I have been the president of the Cow Hollow board for 19 of those years. And that has been kind of the foundation of a lot of the work I have done in the neighborhood, because, as a neighborhood leader, association in particular, you end up being almost like a shadow supervisor. You end up doing all of the quality of life issues that residents rely on someone to do for them. And this is like the basics: the parking, the traffic, if the homeless situation, disaster preparedness, zoning matters between neighbors, all of those things I have done as a volunteer. The Cow Hollow Association is a very engaged association where we step up and we get into the hairy fights if need be. When the Presidio wanted to demolish the bowling alley, we knew that was a beloved recreational destination for people, and we fought back. I mean, they don't have to listen to us; they're federal land, but they, through the process, we ended up prevailing. So we get involved with the big things, the David and Goliath type things, and then the little things, maybe the scooters on the street that are around too much and people are tripping on. So I have been doing that kind of work for a long time when nobody was looking, because I love San Francisco. I am, been here a long time. My husband and I raised both of our daughters right here in District 2. My mom was born in the Marina, so that goes way back. And my grandfather, father, and brother, all Local 38 union members. My brother currently works for the San Francisco Water Department, as did my dad until he retired. So I feel like my family has helped build and serve this city for a long time, and I love it, and it's worth fighting for, and that's why I'm running.
Wonderful. Lori, I just going to ask you my first question to you. Before I do ask it, I want to say hello again to people in the chat. Please say hello to Lori Brooke. She is running for District 2 Supervisor here in San Francisco, California. All politics is local, they say, and certainly it's great to have a local flavor to Substack. And this is, as what I understand, Lori, your first time on Substack doing one of these.
Yeah.
You're doing great. And let me just ask, let me just put an overview in about the districts here in San Francisco for those of you who are not District 2 voters or are not in San Francisco. San Francisco has 11 districts in it. Each of them is headed by a board of supervisor. And District 2 is in the northernmost part of San Francisco, the northwest of the city, and it covers 4 places, typically the Marina, Pacific Heights, Presidio Heights, and Cow Hollow. That's just just an overview for those of you to get a lay of the land. And my first question to you, Lori, is this. What is the job of a supervisor? I know you're running for the position, but what would you say is the job of a supervisor?
So I have worked with, because of my role in the Cow Hollow Association president, I've worked, believe it or not, starting with Gavin Newsom when he was our District 2, and then Michaela, then Mark Farrell, then Catherine Stephanie, and now the current appointed supervisor. And the job of the supervisor, it's to represent both the district that they're in and to represent the city as a whole and how that district fits into that. And it's kind of has two faces to it. You have the constituent services, the people calling the potholes, the basic day-to-day quality of life issues. You have that kind of activity going on all the time. You also have bigger issues, like the upzoning that we've been dealing with recently, things that really affect the city as a whole. And then you have the other half of it, which is the legislative side. So that's the side where you're actually involved with writing laws, being parts of other people's laws, and voting on those things and making that decision. Does this law, how does it impact my constituency, and relatively, how does it impact the city as a whole? So it's kind of a dual hat. Yeah, that's a job.
Absolutely. Okay. I was going to ask you as well, what do you think is the most important issue? You talked about a number of things there about the job of the supervisor, but what do you think the most important issue is for someone in District 2? If you want to become a supervisor, what would be the most important issue to you as a supervisor to tackle?
So it's actually been changing over the last several years. There was the pre-COVID issue, and which was people were really concerned about the homeless crisis in our city. And then through COVID, the issues became more about some of the crime that was going on, and people walking into Walgreens and stealing stuff, and the car break-ins. And that's gotten a lot better. And now the issue has landed more in the affordability space, as we all know, right? Everything's expensive, and it's, none of us have, as a supervisor in one seat, we don't have a magic wand, but we certainly have a voice, that we can speak out on ways in which we think we can impact the affordability in our communities. And that's everything. Okay, top of the list, of course, is housing. People are very frustrated that they can't, afford to live here, and it is frustrating, and it's been a problem for as long as I can remember. San Francisco has always been a very expensive city, but now it is getting further and further out of reach. And unfortunately, it's getting out of reach for the people like our next generation and all of the workforce housing, the people that need to, that want to come here and need to work here every day. And it's a big problem. Some of those solutions that are being proposed by the state, I don't, and many people that are part of my other organizations, which I can mention in a minute, don't believe some of the ways in which the state is trying to solve the problem are really going to actually deliver affordable housing. So I can talk about that separately. That's Neighborhoods United SF. That's another hat I wear. And then, of course, there's, insurance and cost of food, and all the other little things that add up, PG&E and our utilities. So it's whatever role I can play as a supervisor, whether it's just speaking out and making people aware of what's happening and what we need to do to change it, or actually, putting forth legislation that can impact really specific affordability matters.
And you've talked about housing, and that was something I was actually going to ask you about because, um, as you, I'm sure, are very much well aware, there was the Senate Bill 79 that got passed in the Senate and the Assembly here in California last September, and was signed into law by the governor, Gavin Newsom, in October of last year. And I'm sure you're aware of the fact that that's caused a lot of consternation here in District 2 and in other areas too, because what you now have is, in the marina particularly, a Safeway supermarket that's going to be yielding to a lot of housing, but it's going to be like condominiums, I understand, at least 25 stories high. Can you talk a bit about that? Because that's been a real bone of contention for residents in the marina.
Oh, yes, yes. So the situation going on at the Marina Safeway is probably the end product of the last 8 years of Senator Wiener's raft of housing laws that he has put forth, at the Sacramento, level. And those laws have been coming down, not just on San Francisco, but as the state as a whole, in a slow way to remove the voice of local elected leaders and, of course, the voice of the residents, all in an effort to build more housing. We all agree we need more housing, we want more housing, but it should be done in a way that actually delivers the affordability they so seek. And these laws do not produce that. These laws end up creating more luxury housing and luxury towers, because the way our cities now run, a city can provide the capacity for a developer to build, but cities don't build. We don't build housing anymore. We don't do public housing, right? It's so everything's on the backs of the for-profit developers to build our housing. And by no fault of their own, as their name denotes, they are for profit. And so they need to make a profit. And they're not going to be building housing that's predominantly affordable, particularly in this market with, the cost of financing and labor and materials, et cetera. Now, specific to this Safeway project, So you mentioned SB 79. That was the latest and final coup de grace of Senator Wiener's laws, and that affects the whole state. And that is being able to increase the height and density of allowable height and density within a certain radius from transit stops. And in San Francisco, when you take this quarter or half mile radius where most of residential areas are around 4 stories right now, well, used to be the height limit, it's no longer the case. They can go anywhere from 6 to 8 and even more. And that pretty much, if you take all those radiuses and you overlay them, it's probably more than 85% of San Francisco technically would be impacted by that. But set that aside. That's like just the latest of the many state laws. There's all these other ones that have been happening that actually are now producing the Marina Safeway. So that has become the harbinger of things to come. It's something we've been warning about, that we all want housing. We want it done well. We want it to be affordable. We want it to fit within the scope and scale of the community, and we want it to be safe. And as you would never even have to worry about safety, but in this case, I'll explain. So that project is using multiple state laws, and it's an example of how a developer can take AB 2011, SB 35, SB 330, and they start piling it all together. And any layperson could never figure out how to weave it together and produce that, but good lawyers can, and they did. I mean, it's a parcel that's deemed 4 stories, and they are producing one 25-story tower and one 20-story tower. Mind you, both of those are taller than the Fontana towers, who you got, if people remember them, they're by Ghirardelli Square. We call them the buck teeth,
Yes.
two little towers.
Yes.
So these are going to be on the other side of Fort Mason, even larger. Okay, so people can have issues or not with their size. That's one big chunk of complaints, but that is not a legal complaint. It's an aesthetic complaint. But more importantly, this project is mostly, well, it's all apartments. It's not condos. So it's all apartments, and it's predominantly studios and 1 bedrooms. It has some 2 and 3, but it's majority, it's 790 units. And it's also been discussed as being with Airbnb, kind of a flexible living place. So it's not really, and it's going to be expensive, mind you.
Right.
So it is not delivering the raft of housing that the next generation, and they actually want to be able to maybe buy in the city, or be able to raise their families, and these are not for that. But the important thing to know about this project and what it represents, more than just how clever developers can cobble lobs together, what's important to understand is that, well, it has completely removed the voice of Mayor Lurie can do nothing about this project. Nothing. Supervisor, nothing. And that's a pretty far extreme that we've come to, when our elected leaders have no say in a project. And I'll explain why it doesn't make sense. It's not just because of the size, because it is being built on a what's called a Cortese site, and that's a toxic site. And all around it is toxic sites. There used to be a PG&E gas house there, and through the process of generating electricity, the byproduct was this toxic soot that went out. It was behind the Safeway, so it went right where Safeway is and out into the harbor, and that's why the Eastern Harbor there is being remediated by PG&E. The city sued them to clean it up. All around it, the homes that are around there, PG&E have been buying up the homes, cleaning out the soil in the backyard, replacing with. It is a toxic area, and part of our now planning process with a project that big is a checklist. The developer goes, not a toxic site, not a flood zone, 10% affordable housing. Let's check, check, check. And if they check the boxes, planning's like rubber stamp, and off it goes. And that's what was happening. And they had a conditional approval to do that project. And then I, as president of the Cow Hollow Association, president of Marina Community Association, and others, hired a lawyer, because our city was not, they were saying they don't like it, but they weren't doing anything about it. So it took the residents, we hired a lawyer, and he was like, within an hour, he goes, it's on the Cortese site. This is not allowable. You cannot build on a toxic site
Right.
without a proper environmental review.
Mm.
So that's what's happening with that. And, meanwhile, Presidio is building more housing. They're building 194 units of housing, 2, 3, 4 stories. It's going to be market rate. That's just what they're going to do. But we can build housing in District 2. That's done within the scope and the scale of the community, and not on a toxic site. But I just think the Marina Safeway is so illustrative of what we've been warning about, and it will happen around the shoreline of San Francisco and along the big projects like this that bypass community input, that bypass environmental reviews, because they're using these state laws that allow that.
Mm. And did your opponent, Stephen Sherrill, who is the current District 2 supervisor, who was actually appointed by the previous mayor, London Breed, did he say anything about this? Did he put up any kind of resistance to this that you know of? Because I'm not sure that he did, but maybe you
No.
know something about
So
that.
so the story there is, yeah, Stephen did oppose it, as did the mayor, but it's a little bit of the dog catching the car, because everything that Stephen had done prior to that moment was to support development in our city, which is fine. But he supported the mayor's family zoning plan, against the concerns of his constituents, saying, well, my hands are tied. I have to do this because the state laws are demanding that we increase capacity in our city. And we're like, fine, but let's do it more thoughtfully, because what's being imposed doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's only going to make this area more expensive, because once a
Right.
parcel can build more, that parcel is more expensive. And it's going to be harder to build affordability. But Stephen did come out opposing it. So I don't think he had a choice, because it's such a ridiculous project. But I do tell people, and I think people should be aware, that he is endorsed by Senator Weiner. He is endorsed by Grow SF, and he's endorsed by YIMBY California, which are all the groups and individuals that want projects exactly like that. So, you know, take it from
Wow.
there.
Wow. I was gonna actually, wow, you preempted me again, because I was gonna actually ask you about whether or not Wiener's endorsing him, and you've already answered that. Public safety. I'm sorry, what were you
I know
gonna
I said
say?
yes, he is.
Yes. Everybody watching, please hit the hearts. And by the way, subscribe to Lori here on Substack, and yours truly as well. That'd be greatly appreciated. We only have a few more moments here, because we're really pushed for a time. Unless there's maybe a couple more minutes really quickly with you, Lori.
Yeah.
And please do follow Lori, and I'll ask Lori at the end to put forth her social media or her website or those kinds of things. I was going to ask you about public safety really quickly as well. Very important issue as well. Public safety, you've talked about how you support law enforcement. There's one or two things, I'm sure you're aware of. Crime rate in this city has gone down dramatically over the last few years. There was a report in the Chronicle this week, I think it was, that talked about drone technology really aiding the police and law enforcement in helping to get to areas that they can actually more efficiently deal with crime situations and help lower the crime rate in that way. Um, I guess my question is about how you would be assisting law enforcement. Do you approve of drone technology and those kinds of things? And then I guess an additive to that, you may remember that in 2022, in November of that year, the Board of Supervisors voted on what I call killer robots, who were to be employed with explosives in emergency situations where the police department couldn't get to those. They initially voted 8-3 on that. And then they reversed themselves after, of course, there was a lot of outcry against this because of the implications of it, what it could mean to Black people, to brown people, to privacy rights, to all kinds of things. So I just wanted to ask you, and at the time that the District 2 supervisor at the time, Catherine Stephanie, actually voted yes for this. I wanted to ask you about what your vote would be on legislation like that if it came back again, because it ultimately got scrapped, and your comments about law enforcement and aiding law enforcement to reduce crime.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going through
Quite
all
a
this.
bit.
Okay. Let's see. I can work backwards. I could start with the question about the drones and all that. So I've watched every episode of Black Mirror, and AI, and there is the one with the dogs that get into your house and all, and it is frightening. And it's the genie is out of the bottle, and we don't know, when these technologies are used for good, and then when they trip over to being used for bad. And and if we are to deploy things like the drones and the scary dogs that blow up, what are the guardrails? Like, how do you reel back in when something gets abused, misused, in a situation? And since I was not involved in that legislation, I can't speak specifically to did they have any of that. But one thing really important your listeners should know about me, and why I'm running, is I really believe that after all I've been doing and fighting back against City Hall and things that they're trying to impose on our neighborhood, is that the voice of the residents is not often present in City Hall in the decision makings. It's ideas come from the top and they get foisted on the communities. And that is what I bring. As I bring the voice of the residents, I am not beholden to anyone. So, if legislation comes before me, I look at it from a very common sense, practical standpoint, not because I owe any constituent or any organization my vote. And I like when I can bring in all the opinions and have them all in the room at the same time, where nobody can, BS you, right? Because you have the
Right.
other side listening too. I
Right.
mean, that's how I would approach any kind of legislation like this is, am I really understanding all the implications of this? Because if people are against this, why? There must be some good reasons if there's a large outcry, and we should know that. And is it something we can address in the legislation, or is it this legislation not ready for prime time? So that's how I would approach whatever came before me, particularly if it's controversial, such as this. In regards to how do I work with the police, I think residents, it's better over here right now. I don't think the crime situation is as acute as it was during COVID. I think what people really want to see is more of the community officers, the ambassadors, the people that are there walking the streets. They don't always have to be sworn officers, and sometimes they're retired officers, that they know people, they know the businesses. Their presence is first and foremost a deterrent. Just being
Right.
there deters behavior that shouldn't happen. They're also another way, they're there to respond quickly when something is happening. And if there's somebody suffering on the street, if there's a homeless person who needs help and they need services and people to get out there immediately, we call 311 or 911 and we try to address it. But it'd be nice to have people that have the mic right there and they can call it in, or whatever happens across the board. I think that type of community involvement really helps. I really do. I think it makes people feel that they know. It's like Mayberry RFD, right? It's that local officer. And I say that because our neighborhoods are villages. They're little mini villages all over
Hmm.
the city. We know each other. We know the merchants. I choose to buy my bread here locally, then go somewhere else because I want that merchant to stay in business. And when we know each other, we can protect each other and we can help each other, most importantly. So I would aim for more involvement on the street level here, whatever it's ambassadors, whatever kind of level of engagement makes sense.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And one other thing I do want to ask you about is the budget.
Mhm.
Um, there has been what 2024-25 was what a roughly $16 billion budget. Apparently, there was a roughly what 600 to $700 million deficit. Now, the mayor hasn't publicly released the budget for this year yet. It's supposed to be next month. And of course, the supervisors themselves will vote on that in July to approve it or not. The deficit could be as much as what $1 billion for all we know. And the mayor
Yeah.
has over the last few months talked about cuts. I wanted to get your thoughts on the budget and what you would do as a supervisor to try to reduce the deficit.
So, well, one of the first things I think they're going to do, which makes sense, is it's like a hiring freeze, and let attrition also happen. So don't bring on more bodies right now, um, unless they're critical. Right, and any critical seats, you fill those, but anything else that's projects or, consultants, all that other stuff that's fluff, you gotta stop it. You're gonna you gotta tighten the belt, um, in these times. So, hiring freeze except for critical services. Also attrition, as people retire, don't rush to create that seat again, unless it's critical. Then there are, you want to keep your police, your firefighters, your emergency services. They need to be funded so that, I mean, that's the number one job of the city, is to protect its citizens. Um, then there's a lot of infrastructure, right? You got to keep our sewage and our all that stuff running. So those two things need to be protected and funded. But there's a lot of bloat. There's a lot of duplicative activities going on in our city. There's a lot of top level salaries and things that really can be looked at. And I don't know if that's going to cut the budget in half, but I would go after all that first before you try to lay off people, because that is so, disruptive and damaging to a family to lose their job. I mean, it just puts them in such a horrible situation. And I don't think the mayor, nobody wants to be laying people off. That
Right.
is the worst part of the job. And I think he's also going to try to do as little of that as possible. But we have to really think about, where it makes sense if that has to happen. But frontline workers and service stuff should not.
Absolutely, Laurie. I wish I had much more time with you. I know we've gone a
I'll
little
come
bit
back.
over.
When I
Absolutely.
win, I'll be back as supervisor.
Right, right. I just wanted to say, Laurie Brooke, thank you very much indeed. June 2nd is the date of the primary of the election here. Of
Yeah.
course, early voting is going on right now. Laurie, one final thing for you. If you'd like to tell everybody where they can look at your website for all your policies and things, where
Oh,
would they
sure.
go?
So Lori, Lori, Brooke, Brooke.com. So that's my website. And from there, you can read about me. Then my Instagram is Lori Brooke 2026. Those are the
Perfect.
two main places where you'll find information about me. And thank you so much. This has been a delight. I've really appreciated it.
And I really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. And you did great. First time on Substack. This is good. This is
Woo!
terrific.
Be
And
back.
the absolutely, the audience really appreciates you too. Laurie, thank you. Audience, thank you for watching us. Laurie, all the best of luck to you
Thank
with the
you.
campaign and everything else. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.